Hello, guys and gals, and we are continuing our reading of Strange Monsters and Great Searches. This is episode 10. Can't believe there's been that many, but it has. We'll be reading this after we take a look at the copyright page. Copyright 1973 by George Laycock, and all rights reserved, published in large print by arrangement with Doubleday and Company, set in Photon 18-point Helvetica. Medium. We are to number 10, An Incredible Search. Let's see what that's all about. In the last one, we talked about manatees, sea cows, and dugongs. So that was really an interesting one. So we are to An Incredible Search. To Dr. James P. Chapin, nothing could have been more exciting than the discovery of a wild creature never before known to science. Over much of his adult life, Dr. Chapin had wandered through the dense jungles of the Congo. There was no man who knew the birds of the Belgian Congo better. He knew them so thoroughly that he was busy writing a 2-volume set of books on the subject. Of these, the first book was already complete. The second was well underway. Then suddenly there came the hint that he might have missed a large living Congo bird and left it out of the first volume completely. This was unbelievable. The events that led up to the final chapter of this search have been recorded by Dr. Chapin himself. His search and discovery is one of the all-time classics in the annals of scientific detective work. Let me make sure I didn't skip a page there. 27. Okay. From the time he was a boy, Chapin was interested in birds. While other children were content to chase chickens, James was studying their feathers. He found that the feather of a bird was one of the truly amazing structures in the natural world. This awakened in his mind an interest that followed him throughout his life and into distant corners of the world. Eventually, he completed his scientific schooling and joined the staff of the American Museum of Natural History in New York City. His first big foreign adventure came in 1913. That year, he went into the heart of Africa as an assistant on a scientific expedition. During those months in the Belgian Congo, young Dr. Chapin studied feathers of many strange birds he was seeing for the very first time. One day, he took special notice of the headdress of a native from the Ituri forest. The man wore on his head a couple of feathers like none Dr. Chapin had ever seen before. Dr. Chapin bought them from the tribesmen. When he returned to New York in 1915, he carried a bundle of feathers among the museum trays of birds. He identified these feathers, one after the other. By comparing them with those of known birds, he labeled them as he made his identification. But two of the feathers in his bundle were like nothing else he could find among the thousands of birds in the museum. These were the large feathers the native hunter had worn on his head. Dr. Chapin was puzzled by this mystery. He could not find the answer. Years passed. Dr. Chapin continued his studies of the Congo birds. When he was not deep in the jungles, he added to his book. But unsolved riddles are not easily forgotten by the scientific mind. Then in 1936, Dr. Chapin left New York again. This time he sailed for Europe and the Congo Museum near Brussels, Belgium. He was no stranger around the museum either. At various times during the previous 15 years, he had studied the birds there, nearly all of them from Africa. Shortly after reaching the Congo Museum, Dr. Chapin was walking one day from his own laboratory to the office of the museum director, but he took a slightly different route to the director's office on this day than he ever had before. As he later wrote in Natural History magazine, his route took him, by pure chance, through a corridor I had never before entered. It was there that my eyes fell on the two mounted pheasants standing on top of a cabinet. Dr. Chapin stood rooted to the spot. His mind raced back across 24 years to the day an African tribesman with two strange feathers in his hair stood before him. Those feathers had been reddish-brown with black bars on them, the feathers still unidentified, waiting in a museum cabinet. Dr. Chapin believed they had come from some gallinaceous or chicken-like bird. He recalled that at the time he thought they might be from some bird unknown to science, but he had dismissed that idea as preposterous. Of that moment, as he stood before the two mounted specimens, he said later, "Now I have stumbled on the bird from which it must have come. Dr. Chapin rushed on to the office of the director and questioned him about the two dusty mounted birds standing neglected on top of the hall cabinet. He had already inspected their labels and knew they were not correctly identified. They were not peacocks, as the tag said. Where he wanted to know, had they come from? How had they reached the Congo Museum? The two peacocks had arrived at the museum as part of a collection of mounted birds from a Brussels business firm. For many years, they had stood on display in cases in the company office. The big question was where these mystery birds had been killed, and Dr. Chapin could only speculate on this. Then, about a month later, he was invited to dine with a gold mining engineer known to him for his days in the Congo. A quarter of a century before, the engineer recalled from his experiences in the Congo a dinner he had been served in 1930 in the heart of Africa. One of the natives had brought in the bird, which the engineer now described for Dr. Chapin. As he spoke of the bird's form and feathers, Dr. Chapin was thinking of the mounted and mislabeled peacocks in the museum. His excitement was growing. His host then drew a sketch of the Congo bird, and it was plainly a picture of the museum's unidentified birds. With this, all doubts were gone, and as Dr. Chapin wrote, we were dealing with a great discovery, a typical pheasant with some slight resemblance to the Asiatic peacocks. This was all the more amazing because there were no other known members of the true pheasant family in all of Africa. But for Dr. Chapin, the search was only getting underway. Several years had passed since the engineer friend had feasted on the strange bird. Next, the world of science would have to find the birds living in the wild Congo forest. Only then would the strange search be complete and the proof be absolute. This would mean another trip to the Congo to search for the newly discovered bird, and Dr. Chapin began at once to plan such a journey. Had others seen the strange new bird or heard about it? Dr. Chapin wrote a brief article, and it was reprinted in Africa. Such an announcement is likely to bring in a wide variety of reports. Most people would like to play a part in the discovery of a new wild creature. Few, however, have the training or experience to know the common from the uncommon. Dr. Chapin expected to hear from people who mistook other birds for the Congo pheasant. He did, but he also obtained a few leads that he knew he should follow. One came from a policeman who said that he had once shot one of the birds. What's more, he had the bird mounted. It was now in the possession of his sister in Belgium. In due time, the specimen arrived at the museum, and it was indeed one of the strange pheasants. Finally, on the edge of the jungle country in the Congo, where he was certain the birds must live, Dr. Chapin began his own hunting. Friends had sent to him a skilled native hunter, a man who knew all the creatures of the woods, including, he said, the strange pheasant which Dr. Chapin had come so far to find. During the days that followed, the two men, one from America and the other from the Congo, walked through the forest, alert for a sign of the bird. They stopped often to listen and look, and searched one forested slope after the other. The hours wore on, and days passed. Then Dr. Chapin's luck turned for the better. The morning had been rainy, Dr. Chapin said. The afternoon was very dark, and at 5:20 we had just started homeward. We were ascending a slope when I saw something dark running through the low bushes ahead. His companion was carrying a gun for just such an occasion, and he too glimpsed the dark form of the large bird. The man dashed off through the brush, and Dr. Chapin saw him lift the gun. There followed a sharp explosion, and sound reverberated through the woodlands. Then Dr. Chapin saw the bird again. It had escaped and hurtled itself into the air. Now it pulled itself through the woods at top speed, and neither of the men ever saw it again. They soon saw a second bird, and this one too escaped. 2 days later, when they were hunting, two birds flushed again, and this time the hunter dashed forward, then slowed and began looking into the trees overhead. Then he quickly raised his gun, and fired twin blasts. Dr. Chapin heard the heavy body of the bird thump against the ground. The hunter ran and brought it back even before it was dead. For Dr. Chapin, the search that had started years earlier with 2 unknown feathers was now near its end. At last, he held in his hands full proof not only that these birds still lived, but also where they dwelled. The bird carried to him that day was a young male. With 1 bird in possession, perhaps he could press forward, continue the hunt, and add still others to his collection. In those days, ornithologists commonly looked upon rare birds as something one collected from museum shelves. In later days, with so many specimens becoming rare and threatened, scientific observers are far more inclined to allow the rare birds to go on living. For another 5 days, Dr. Chapin stayed in the forest hunting the Congo peacock, but the only one he took was the single young male bird shot from its perch in the tree. How could a bird so large have gone undetected by science for so long? This was a question Dr. Chapin was often asked. The answer, he felt, must lie in the fact that the bird's range had by then shrunk to remnants of what it once had been. As far as he could determine, it was found only in the limited region of the Congo where ornithologists had not then done much research. Since then, however, it had been located in numerous places throughout the Congo forests. The longer scientists studied the bird, the more clearly they realized that it was not truly as rare as Dr. Chapin rare as Dr. Chapin's remarkably long search would indicate. It is not now considered either rare or endangered. Besides, gallinaceous birds, to which the Congo pheasant belongs, are easily raised in captivity, and a number of zoos far from the bird's native Congo now have stocks of these birds. For all those who seek to unravel the threads of evidence running through the cloth of natural history, there is a lesson in the long trail followed by Dr. Chapin as he pieced together the story of the Congo peacock. There are still mysteries to ponder, hidden trails to explore, questions to ask. No one can know for certain that all the strange creatures have yet been discovered, and the perpetual promise of another unknown keeps restless observers watching both sides of the trail as they walk and studying the feathers worn by native hunters they meet. This and next is Mysterious Tracks, but we will hit that one next time. We have been reading from Strange Monsters and Great Searches by George Laycock. If you like this content, make sure you like and subscribe and ring the bell so you know when I upload. And if you want to support me in any way, all that information will be in the description below. As always, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.